Welcome back, Inebriites. I was starting to chit chat and forgot to hit record, so we were kind of in the middle of explaining where Plymouth was. But today we're joined by Nona Invie. Did I get that right? Yeah, that's good for me. That's like a gold star this week. Who has a new album coming out February 28th, which I think this will go up after your album's out. Album's called Self-Soothing. Welcome to the show, Nona.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, anytime. So we were just you're in Minnesota, right?
Yeah, I'm in Minnesota and I was saying there's a suburb called Plymouth here that's not too far. There's some nice lakes around Plymouth.
Oh, that's an interesting. I wonder. Obviously, that would have had been named after, not named after, but like was named chronologically after Plymouth, Mass,
Yeah.
which is known for having like a ton of like lakes and ponds, and
Hmm.
I think there's like I don't- I could be making this number up entirely, so don't quote me. Like over 1,000. Um,
I believe it. We
yeah,
have we're the land of 10,000 lakes, but I think there's actually like 15 plus thousand lakes in Minnesota. So I feel like kindred spirit to lake lands.
yeah. Well, I mean, right now we're like in a bit of a crisis. We're like bird flu is a huge issue here right
Mm,
now.
scary.
Yeah, and they're finding all sorts of, infected and deceased, everything from seagulls to bald eagles and
That's so
swans, and
sad.
yeah, it's you try to keep that Lion King, it's the circle of life kind of mindset, but you
Kind of,
know,
except for like human intervention, like the human toll on the circle of life is.
yeah, I don't the bird flu. I don't know if I'm sure we didn't help. I'll say that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure how much we had to do with it, but we did. We're idiots. We didn't. Yeah, but so the album, Self Soothing. Can you tell us a little bit about it now that we've talked
Yeah.
about dead birds?
Yeah. Well, bird flu is really on my mind because I have two cats and they're like indoor outdoor, but I've been keeping them indoor and we don't have like there has been bird flu in Minnesota, but I think it was pretty contained as far as I understand. But still I'm like really worried that my cats would be like patient zero for house cats getting bird
can
flu or
can
something.
they get it?
Yes.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. You're like one of that's why I'm like really I was reading about bird flu a lot this morning
Oh,
actually
really? Oh, that's funny.
because I also will like, whatever. I interact with cats a lot. I like cats. So on the street like if I see a cat and it looks friendly, I'll pet it.
Yeah.
But it was like don't interact with, cats that are acting strangely or something because they could have bird flu. And then I don't think it's jumped from like a cat to a human. But anyway, that's the fear. Now I'm sounding like a crazy cat lady, but I'm just like,
Well, I mean, it
I mean,
really
I
only
just
takes that one jump.
and yes. So I feel, I'm just feel conscious of I'm like keeping up in some capacity on bird flu.
Yeah.
But
Well,
anyway,
it's good that you're looking out for your cats, though. I mean,
yeah, I
I'm
don't
more of
want
a dog person,
that.
but
Well, I have two dogs too. They're upstairs because they're too rowdy. They can't be trusted during an
oh,
interview.
poor cats.
um, I okay, the record,
Yeah.
self-soothing. The record is I feel like it's really for me, it's like a very personal record. Feels very selfish. I feel like I wrote it for myself. It's like a experiment in just being honest with myself and kind of also taking myself seriously and like finishing like I've made a bunch of records in the past, but I feel like this one was really fleshed out.
Yeah.
There's like more of a depth to it. And I had Andrew Broder as a producer who I worked with, and he really like took the songs to a whole new level. And so just kind of like going for it and see what would happen. I feel like that's the whole exercise for me with this record. And I'm like excited to share it with people. I hope that people connect with it. And at the same time, it just feels really like selfish. Where every song I'm just like, I needed this. This is like a lullaby for me, or it like helped
Yeah.
process something that I was going through. And I don't know how, I don't know.
Well, I see. I don't know. I'm gonna play devil's advocate here and kind of say that as human beings, there's almost. I'm not gonna say almost. I don't think there's anything we do that isn't selfish in some capacity. Even like when you're working for charity, you're generally doing it to make yourself feel good and feel like
Mm,
you be like, oh, I'm part of the society, or I did something good today, or you're feeling guilty about something. And so I don't feel like the only time I feel like selfishness is bad is when you're like, I'm taking more than is mine, even though I don't need it.
yeah, when you're like predatory or
Yeah. But if
yeah,
you're like, I'm making something creative, be it music or art, for me and putting it out there and hoping someone else is going to connect with that, I feel like that's more like reaching out and trying to connect with other people and being kind of genuine and true to yourself.
great. I love that. Thank you.
No, I did because I was actually thinking about this the other day. And I said something, I was kind of just like thinking to myself, I'm like, it's kind of selfish. I'm like, yeah, but I mean, it's a good thing. And I'm doing it to make myself happy, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I do actually think about selfishness a lot, because of, well, I read the Sheila Heti book, Motherhood, I think it's called. She's
Okay.
like, when she wrote it, she was like in her 40s. It's about like having kids or not having kids and being an artist and kind of like all of the thoughts that one has, like of a certain, I feel like when I read it, I really related to it because I don't have kids. A lot of my friends do. And
Yeah.
like one of the and I love kids. I teach piano lessons to kids and I'm an aunt and I'm like I have a lot of kids around me.
They're the best ones because you can give them back.
Exactly. I'm very appreciative. I love being connected to kids too, but she writes about like the selfishness feeling of being like, is it selfish be whatever, like the various ways that choosing not to have kids can be deemed selfish. And I've just like since I read that book a few years ago, I've been meditating on selfishness a lot as
Yeah.
an artist to be like, can I prioritize myself and my art and my music? And does that equal selfishness? It's curious. It's a curious question in our society, I feel like.
But I think that some of that comes from the idea that you're supposed to have kids.
Right, right, right.
Like I
Yes.
don't. I mean, there's a lot of people who have kids that I'm like, you definitely shouldn't have had kids. Um, but as someone who has managed to not kill two children all the way through to adulthood,
Nice.
uh, it 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 is a battle of like feeling. It's so it is extremely rewarding. It's extremely challenging, but I don't feel like it's selfish for someone to be like, I don't think I'm up for that challenge. Like I feel like I'm reasonably intelligent. I could probably learn enough to do brain surgery, but I
Ooh.
don't want that challenge. Like
Yeah.
no aspect do I want someone else's life in my hands. Um, but yeah, I mean, like in there's certain things that people do, and it's this kind of balance where like I don't want my kids to be interested in what I'm interested in the selfish way. But in the same aspect, you want to share the things, be like, I love this movie when I was a kid. You should watch it. And so it's just kind of, it is a weird balance. And then I know people who have kids that their whole life revolves around their kid. And I'm like, you need you time. And they're like, well, I don't want to be it's not selfish. Like you need to be in a good frame for them. And it is
Yeah.
this weird balance. So it's,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
interesting. So whether or not you actually have kids, there is still like this question of selfishness.
Yeah.
Maybe just like pervades every aspect of our culture or something. Like it's kind of like you're just like, you can't win.
Yeah.
Whatever I do.
Well, I think it's a good thing that people are thinking, am I being selfish? Because I feel like
Yes,
there's a good number of people who don't have that thought and
true.
maybe should.
Definitely true.
Yeah. So, but it's entitlement, I think, is a far worse thing
Hmm.
than. And like I said, if you're taking more than you need just to have it and you're not going to use it, that to me is real selfishness.
Hmm.
If you're like, I need a day to myself to decompress, I don't really feel like that's being selfish. That's self-soothing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's doing what you have to do to like
Yeah.
be able to handle everything else in your life that
Yeah. The,
needs to be.
the best parenting. So my kids are turning 21 and 23 this year. And so I have a lot of friends with young kids, and I say your obligations are to feed them, clothe them, love them. The rest is all smoke and mirrors. If you do those three things, you're pretty good. But you also want to follow the airplane instructions. And if you go like they do the emergency announcement on the airplane, and they're like, if the cabin decompresses, you put your oxygen mask on before helping your child.
Mhm.
And the reason you do that is if you pass out, you're not going to be able to help your child. So I don't think enough people
Take
as
the
parents do the self care. They don't, go to therapy. They don't schedule time for themselves. They don't schedule time for them and their partner to be a couple,
Yeah.
you know?
I wonder if that's changing for the next generations who are just like more in tune to that piece, the like mental health and self-care piece.
Yeah.
Kind of curious about like, I know some teens now, I'm just like maybe in 10 years, 20 years, whenever they're having kids, I want to check in and be like, what is that experience is going to be so different than I feel like my parents.
Yeah. Yeah. I hope so. I mean, like, as my kids, get older, I see them doing some interesting things that I'm like, oh, I wish when I was 20 that I was like, I'm not going to throw myself into my crappy job to the point where I wasn't allowing myself to have time off. They're like, yeah, I'm not working Saturdays
Nice.
because I
Yeah.
don't want to, and
Yeah.
and
More
like,
balanced life.
yeah, and it's, people will look at that and be like, oh, they're lazy, or I'm like, or smart, like I wish I took more Saturdays off,
Yeah.
you know, but yeah, it's
Well,
but
congrats on raising cool kids.
again, I always say I'm extremely lucky because all it takes is one bad friend to ruin it.
Ah,
And I'm divorced from my ex-wife, and so I was the weekend dad. So kudos to her and her partner because it's like they did the grind. I got to be the fun weekend dad, so
yeah.
I kind of know my place. So,
Gotcha.
so I'll take 30%.
Nice. 30% is a lot,
Yeah, yeah. All the good 30%. The bad 30, that's someone else. No, they're amazing kids, and it's. I was talking with a friend of mine who just had a baby, and they're like, "Oh, I selfishly don't want them to grow up," and I'm like, "No, they're cool at every stage because you kind
Mhm.
of get to see them to become little people." And I mean, like you must see it with your students, right?
Oh, yeah. It's
Yeah,
like, and I have two nephews, and I have kids that I've known for 18 years now who I've watched like in all the phases of, or she's 19. So, yeah, 19 years where it's it's incredible to see them become. I mean, they have personalities when they're tiny. They're like already knowing them at like 2 and 3 and seeing them at 19. You're like, oh, you are the same person. It's wild.
yeah, yep, yeah, exactly. But then they'll decide something, and you'll be like, "Wow, that's like a grown up decision that you just did right there.
Hmm.
That's pretty cool."
Yeah.
And
Oh, you're moving out. You're getting your own apartment. Okay.
yeah, yeah, my youngest
That's cool.
moved out, is talking about like down the, not quickly down the road moving with their boyfriend, and they were talking marriage the other day, and I'm like, man, like, were we like, how soon are we talking? Because now I'm like, oh shit, hang on, that's no, I don't know if I'm ready for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, it's just kind of, it's crazy. So, and they're another one. Zoe, I don't think has any interest in having kids. Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's fine. That's their choice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Uh,
great. Yeah. I like that that's also becoming more acceptable, to and especially if you know early to just be like, this isn't the life that I'm gonna have, and that's fine. Maybe Zoe won't struggle with the selfishness piece and they'll just get to be like a fully formed artist or whatever they are
yeah.
without that.
They are currently working for a sign making company and have done some graphic design work, and so it's really cool to see them kind of like step into their adulthood. And,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's very fun. Um, so what made you want to make a selfish record?
It was sort of like I just had to. I don't know if you've had that feeling with anything before, but
Of course.
I mean, it was like lockdown, whatever. I'm at home. I'm in my studio and just started. I mean, I've been playing music out in the world for like 20 years almost. So it's part of me, it's who I am. I'm going to be writing and working on music, but it became more focused. Like I wrote all these demos and just felt so compelled that I needed them to become more than demos. Like I think I could have recorded them myself, just me singing and playing the piano and adding synth layers. Like I could definitely have done that. I've done that before, but I wanted to take it to Andrew to see what he thought of it. I guess to get some outside perspective too, after kind of like being inside just with myself for 2 years to be like, is this something? Is this worth something? I mean, worth whatever. But like,
Yeah.
am I? Because this could just stay a bedroom record. That's fine. It doesn't need to. But I just felt so compelled. Like these songs really mean something to me, and I wanted to share, and I wanted to spend more time on them, like give them that space and time that I felt like they deserved.
Yeah.
And it's not just like a throwaway. I mean, whatever. I'm not that prolific of a writer, a songwriter, I guess. But in the past, I've done things that are like more instrumental or like happen faster and then you just like put it on SoundCloud or whatever and then it's done and I don't think about it again. So to be like, no, I'm going to spend 2 years like writing and then another year recording and then doing
Yeah.
interviews and getting it all out, it's like it really means something to me.
Uh, like I totally get that compulsion to like create. I think every creative person has it where they're just like, I have a weird idea and I'm going to do this, and maybe no one sees it. Maybe I throw it away, you know. But so I love that you sent it to someone else to kind of be like, give me real feedback on this because like we did a YouTube show for one of our other podcasts, and we shot the first episode, and I sent it to friends of mine out of state, and I'd be like, is this funny because I know all these people, or is this like real funny?
Mm.
And how to get their feedback. They're like, no, it's funny, and I'm like, all right, okay, because like
Yeah.
you don't know. It's like, is it my friends making me laugh, or are they genuinely being funny? So it's so important to have that kind of person that is going to give you honest feedback and not just kind of be like, no, it's great. You should definitely do that.
Yeah. I know. I think that having music or whatever kind of artwork we're creating be a dialogue. Like I keep talking about it being selfish and whatever, but it is a dialogue between me and the producer, between me and the other instrumentalists. I recorded everything, and then the sax player and the bass player, like added their parts to it. One lives in California, one lives in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got it back, I was like, oh, these parts really elevated these songs, and now I need to re-record my vocals and like I need to rise to the
Yeah.
what they brought to it. And so it is this like ongoing dialogue, I think, and then performing it live is a whole nother beast where like I'm figuring out when I'm alone solo, like how if I want to have some backing tracks, how I want to present the vocal parts, which sometimes have like multiple harmonies. So just like rearranging it and spending time thinking about it too, I feel like has been really good for me and like takes it out of the internal space. Yeah,
Yeah.
brings it
Do,
out into the world.
do you, when you're thinking about playing it live, are you thinking like what kind of venue? Are you like, do I want to do a coffee house kind of thing or a small
Yeah.
theater?
Well, I was really specific in Minneapolis. I'm having two release shows, and it's at this small bar downtown Minneapolis, called Berlin.
Yeah.
And it's kind of swanky. It's kind of like
Okay.
sexy lighting, and there's a little stage with a grand piano on the stage, and
Oh, cool.
it seats 50 people. Drinks are like $15 probably. You know, it's like you get tinned fish and Ritz crackers. It's
Yeah.
like the new swanky. And I just
So
wanted
they have mixologists and not bartenders.
um I wonder what they I'm friends with some of the bartenders. I don't think they call themselves mixologists,
Yeah.
but
I don't
they
feel
are,
like any real bartender calls
yeah,
themselves a
they're
mixologist.
really good at what they do. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of NA stuff. It's like it's a great um they're like support they're really music forward. I feel like they really support musicians and pay people well and like have created this environment where it's really comfortable. Like it only seats 50 people, but everybody has a seat, you know, and
Yeah.
you don't have to get food and drink, but you can comfortably have dinner while you're watching music. And like to me that's really important to have this whole vibe where people can be like, I have everything I need, I'm comfortable, I can sit here for 50 minutes and really just tune in to what's
Yeah.
happening on stage and not feel like distracted or like jostled or too tight, you know, because I have
Mhm.
that experience a lot at shows. I think like whatever, I'm getting older and also like from COVID times, like I still wear a mask when I'm in tight spaces and I feel really conscious of like how close I am to people
Yeah.
and what kind of air we're breathing. And I just want to make the show experience comfortable if I can. And so like at least in Minneapolis I could control that by like finding like working with Berlin who've been really great. And then on tour it's more like I booked this US tour, which is just like all my friends in different cities just being like, can you make a nice night for me? I don't care. It's a living room. I
Yeah.
don't care. If it's a
Yeah.
venue, whatever. It's an art gallery, great. Like as long as there's a PA and like people are nice, I literally don't care. I just want to be with my friends. I want to share the music and have people be like excited about it in an easy way, you know, like
Yeah. Yeah.
show is fun and easy and we're like not stressed.
You just made me realize that like Plymouth is a very arts and music town, but we don't have that kind of space with that kind of vibe. Like
Mm.
we don't have like a piano bar. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
it's we have bars that could, but they just don't have that kind of setup.
Do you
Um,
have a lot of like jazz? Do you have like a jazz scene in Plymouth or
um, I feel like we absolutely could. Like I feel like if there was so Plymouth is weirdly like there's a lot of you know local bands, there are touring bands, there are up and coming bands, but also weirdly like it's where old musicians come to retire for some weird reason.
Hmm.
Um like BB King's bassist lives in Plymouth. Some musicians that toured with Aerosmith live in Plymouth because I mean they're only like up the road. But the lead singer of the hair band Striper lives in Plymouth.
Okay.
One of the keyboardists for Ministry lives in Plymouth. It's just like this weird,
That's
like,
cool.
yeah. And there's
You
this
could
little,
definitely have like a cool music focused jazzy like because this place Berlin it's like jazz but also experimental.
yeah,
Like they've just set the tone where they're like the people who go in there sometimes it's a happy hour like downtown crowd whatever but I feel like the vibe is generally pretty open to
yeah,
whatever music is happening and like supportive and
yeah.
I feel like if you have a town with a bunch of cool rockers they should start a bar.
Well, I don't know if they're all friends. That's part of
Oh.
it. But and that's the thing is like bars and restaurants, we have like more than you could possibly imagine. There's
Mm.
like a mile stretch of two roads that like one is on the water where the Plymouth Rock is, and one is the next block over. Between those two roads, in about a mile, there's ballpark 40 plus bars and restaurants.
So it's like a, is it like Nashville, like downtown Nashville vibe kind of, where it's like,
So I have had friends who are from Nashville, and they say it has a similar vibe and similar quality music, which I found very surprising.
is it
Uh,
kind of touristy? Like, is Plymouth, is that,
Very, yeah. So like it's usually like summer, and then like in uh like that middle fall, early winter, like right around Thanksgiving.
gotta see the leaves, gotta peep the,
Yeah, that's more like New Hampshire.
okay.
But it's more like people come here for like history and stuff, like that kind of thing. Um, are disappointed when they see Plymouth Rock, which is fun for us. Um, but it is locally, people come here for, the music and the arts and the restaurants. Like it is very common for surrounding towns to be like, well, let's go to Plymouth for the night. And you can kind of bar hop, and there are bars that like you're describing that I'm like, that is, that sounds like Malbar, that sounds like Uva, but they just don't have that kind of, I don't know, no one who owns it has like thought being like, ooh, we should make it a piano bar or like a jazz bar. And
Yeah,
we have but like every kind of other stage, like we have bars that, there's a dude jammed in the corner playing a guitar. And then there's a one like across the street that has like a back room with a full stage and lighting and sound.
yeah,
And then there's a performing arts center, and then there's Memorial Hall, which will hold a couple thousand people. So it's like you can have these different sizes, and like Memorial Hall will get more varied things. Like they'll bring in Irish musicians for March, and Dylan played there in the '60s. So it's like it's very varied, but you don't just have that kind of like low lighting, let's go have some cocktails and some guys noodling away on the piano. That would be
yeah,
super cool.
exactly. I know it is really cool. It feels really special, and I hope that I don't know how like in a capitalist structure, I don't know how successful it is yet or something, but I think there's like I really hope that they get the chance to like stick around for a while and figure
Yeah,
it out because I it's like felt really nice in this city to have that as an option to listen to music. And I mean there's so many venues here, so many spaces, and a lot of cool like independent places, like First Ave, famously is here, and they're not like a part of the Live Nation thing, which I really appreciate. And they own a bunch of venues that are all great. There's like a lot of art gallery. I mean, there's a really robust scene of like different kinds of like DIY to, very profesh
yeah,
venues. But I feel like this is like filling this little niche right now of like the intimate, um, slower paced or something that people
yeah,
have maybe been craving. Like, yes, you might like pay a little more, or no, there's a lot of free music too. So I don't know. I feel like it's a good mix. I'm happy for them. I'm happy it exists. And
yeah.
I think on tour I'll be playing in like little speakeasy is one in Pittsburgh, and like a bar, like a collective kind of anarchist bar in New York and Manhattan, and then like
Okay.
a little art gallery in Providence. And
Oh, you coming to Providence?
yeah, I'm gonna play. There's this place called the Lost Bag in
Okay.
Providence, which I think is like a Gen Z art gallery, and I'm really excited to see
Oh,
what
that's cool.
they're cooking up.
Lost
Um,
Bag. I'll have to look into that because
yeah,
Providence is like right down. It's not. I drive a lot, so for me, it's
yeah, yeah.
right down the road.
Like a
Most people
couple,
are like, "Oh, that's too far." Lost Bag.
yeah. And I'm just like I love seeing what people are excited about in their towns too, and what the different cultures are, like how
Yeah.
people make and sustain community.
And that's, I think that is one of the things that made me fall in love with Plymouth is you can go see, like today I think there's a food and wine expo at Memorial Hall, so you can go and be hoity-toity with your fancy wines.
Right.
Um,
There's a place, there's a time and place for it, you know?
yeah, and then like there'll be an Irish band that plays there. Then they'll have Piff the Magic Dragon, and then at the Spire Performing Arts Center they'll have some older blues musician, or they've had the guitarist from the Scorpions play there. And then just down the road is like the best dive bar that you can possibly imagine, and it's
Of
got
course.
like a little bit of everything. If you want some Korean food, you can go get that. If you want like fine dining, it's just no matter what you want to do, you don't really have to go far to do it. So
Yeah.
that's what I love. Um, the When you go on tour, is it just you, or are you bringing? Because you mentioned like other musicians from other parts of the country. So is it just you
Yes.
and
I
tracks, or?
think I think a friend is going to like accompany me and help drive and do
Yeah,
merch and stuff, but it's just me on tour. And then in the US, they've like every night is a different night of bands. But I'm going to France for 2 weeks too, and that's with of my friend's band called My Name Is Nobody, and we're playing all the shows together. So we'll, like properly be on tour together.
yeah, that's pretty cool. Though, is this your first tour?
No. Well, it's my
No.
first tour for this record, but
Yeah,
I've like toured pretty extensively in my life. So
that it seems like it seems like when you're doing it, it could be very arduous, but like when you're done, I feel like you reflect like, oh, it was so much fun. We did this, this, and this, but there are times in the car where you're like, why am I doing this?
no, I think that I kind of think I was born to tour. Like I don't get bored. I love looking out the window and just like I have a full like like my head is full like when I'm just like peacefully in the car just like listening to a book on tape or whatever. If I'm driving, I do like to listen to books on tape a lot when I'm driving. And it's like really serene for me in general, and I feel really like lucky and inspired by the different landscapes, like being able to travel all around the US and Europe and Australia. It's like really fun and cool. And like,
Yeah.
yes, and like nobody wants to hear about the arduous and like annoying parts about it. So like it is like when it becomes a job, like any job, it's difficult. And especially if you are trying to make money doing it, that has its own stress.
Yeah.
Like in general, like the fantasy of like traveling is I love living in that place when it can be, when it's like all happy, when it's like 2 or 3 weeks at a time. I'm not gone for too long from my house, which I also like have a full life back at home. So
Yeah. And everything goes right, and there'll never be a flat tire or
I know exactly. And it's like I've like lived through all of that, like almost like everything that could happen on tour. I feel like I've pretty much been
Oh,
through.
I feel like you just poked the tour gods.
Just like I mean, definitely there's more that can happen, and but I do feel like I have a pretty good disposition for being on tour, and I think that it is like harder. Like I have my creature comforts, but I also feel like I can bring some of that with me, and I get antsy when I'm home for too long. I know that I need to go on tour, and like
Yeah.
these ones specifically, like for this record, are all about like having fun and being easy. And I think if it was like a booking agent, I mean, I've been in this situation before where a booking agent books like a month of tours and there's like a bunch of shows in small towns where nobody knows us. And it's like more of a grind, like
Yeah.
every day driving 8 hours and
To play in front of three
drinking.
people that aren't paying
Well,
attention.
exactly. And
Yeah.
like eating crappy food on the road. It gets expensive if you're like trying to eat well, or it's
Yeah.
like it's hard, so it can become a grind. It can be a grind, but at least this next month of touring, I think hopefully will be pretty nourishing.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
hope.
And it's I've been very lucky to kind of, I was talking about this yesterday on the episode before this. how lucky I am because it's like I didn't have to grow up. Like I still get to play and go on road trips, and like my life is weird and always interesting. Um, but I get it. It's not for everyone. Like some people don't want to sit in a car for like 4 hours to go do something that may be phenomenal or may be a disaster.
Exactly.
And
But I'm like, I have all my little favorite co-ops that I like to go to, all
yeah.
the cafes and restaurants, and like
So you
there's
sound
so
like you're definitely a foodie.
I do well, I have learned on tour that it is like really important for me to prioritize like health and
Yeah,
wellness, I guess in general, which like and like my just what makes me happy, which is like good food.
yeah.
And so I think finding those little like if it's a little diner, like yeah, some dim sum in Boston. I was thinking about that the other day, how I'm sorry, but I haven't like had the best of time in Boston. Like but,
You don't have to apologize.
but I did eat some really good dim sum there that I've
Yeah,
never had like I haven't had as good of dim sum anywhere else. And so I like really appreciate that I got to eat that
yeah.
there.
It's this the state is very, very strange.
It's big.
It is. But it's weird because if you look at it on an electoral map, it always goes Democrat since like Reagan administration. But then when you're here, you're like, how does that happen? Because it is
Yeah.
very it is heavily populated blue cities in a sea of red towns.
Well, honestly, Minnesota's like that too. If
Is
you
it?
like drive around, like Minneapolis and South, like there's Minneapolis and then there's a college town, Duluth, like 2.5 hours. No, Duluth isn't a college town. I don't know why I said that. It's its
Yeah.
own city, but it's like 3 hours, 2.5 hours north of Minneapolis are like the big blue areas. And then everywhere else is red. And when
Yeah.
you drive around, there's like, you definitely get that feeling. Like when you leave the city, it's the billboards and the like people's personal things they're putting in their yard, whatever. You're like, oh,
Yeah.
I don't get a flat tire around here. you know
Yeah.
all the people are very nice in Germany, but I think it's like that in a lot of like especially big states where you're
Yeah.
like you have these clusters of whatever kinds of ideology, and then you get outside and there's a whole lot of stuff going on.
It is yeah, not to get political because it's
And
not
I'm like,
not it's not a good time. But yes, I mean it's I've heard plenty of people be like Boston is this or it's that or whatever. Um and I've never lived in there. I've gone in plenty of times, but usually when I go in it's I'm going to see a show or a hockey game or like I have an agenda. I'm gonna
yeah,
grab something to eat, back in my 20s, maybe go to a club. Like I'm not there to, I don't know, experience the day to day life. It's more
yeah,
just kind of like get in and get out.
yeah.
Which when you can
I,
do that, it's fun.
I think that's kind of interesting. Like being on tour, sometimes it can be like that. Like you're just at the venue, you play the show, you get in, you get out. But
Yeah,
I also think that depending on what kind of tour it is, I feel like I've been open to it and like lucky to be able to experience a sort of like slice of day-to-day life in a lot of cities. Like if
yeah,
I'm staying with friends and sleeping on their couch and getting up when they get up, or they'll be like, "Oh, we have time. Let's," like speaking of Providence, there's like so many beautiful places to swim around there, like little quarries outside
yep,
of town, and people who are like willing to take you on a little adventure and be like, this is what life is like, like in
yep,
the summer when you have a few hours and you go to the beach, like this is incredible. We don't have the ocean here. So I always
okay.
getting to swim in other kinds of places. And
Yeah, it's funny. Is like, I think when you live in Massachusetts, you think of Rhode Island as one town and not a state.
hmm,
And we were doing an event down there at a winery, and we're driving and driving and driving, and I'm like, Rhode Island's not this big. Like, where the hell are we? And we get there, and it's just beautiful. Like everything inside is like wood and wine barrels and beautiful glassware. And in the back is this huge stretching property where like one bit is a wildflower farm and one bit is like a Christmas tree farm, and then there's the area where they grow the grapes, and it's this little pond, and it's
Yeah.
gorgeous. And I turn
Yeah.
to my business partner, I'm like, ugh, this is so romantic, and I'm here with you.
Yeah.
And it's there are tons of hidden gems around, and if like where to look,
Yeah.
it's that's
When you
why when
have
I
a little insider intel about like
yeah,
this road, like, and I feel like I used to prioritize that a lot on tour too. Like, let's leave 2 hours early. I mean, especially in the days before phones and like maps on phones,
yep,
had literally like a paper map, and we would see the route and look for the water on it and be like, okay, if we go this way, it looks like there's something we can swim in. So let's
yeah.
leave early and take this little detour. And like I've had some really just like special times, not just in the car, like that's what I feel
Yeah.
like makes tour worth it. And even now, even though these next shows are like depending on what time of the year you're touring, you can't always like be swimming every day, but
Yeah.
um just like having that kind of open-mindedness to be like, what is, like we get to experience this part of the world. So what is there besides just the highway and the gas stations? Although you can learn a lot from gas stations too. Yeah.
My favorite thing to do is to go to like the corporate bar, the Fridays or Chili's or whatever for beer. And then you start talking to the bartender and you say to the bartender, where do I need to go in town?
Mm,
Because they're going to tell you, all right, what kind of food do you like? This is the place where you should go. It's a great bar that, like when this place shuts down, everyone goes and hangs out. And then you kind of get to know like
yes.
where the townies go and like
Yeah,
to give you like the real vibe. But
definitely. And
I'm
yeah,
not,
that's more like the day-to-day life kind of. You're like,
yeah,
this is where people actually find community.
yeah.
It's not just like the happy hour bar, but
And I'm not a tourist attraction person. Like I was in London for like 2 days, I think. And my friends are like, "Oh, did you go to the Tower of London?" I'm like, "No." They're like, "Did you go to Buckingham Palace?" I'm like, "No." Like, what did you do? I'm like, "I went to Camden. It was freaking awesome."
yeah, I went
You know?
shopping.
Yeah, it was in like we just like bar hopped and went shopping, and it was
Yeah.
like it was so to me, it was so like I can see pictures of Buckingham Palace and be like, "Yeah, I get it."
Well, I was just talking to a friend about Paris, and I think London's kind of like this too, where there's so much history. It's so much older than the US.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
like it actually, these cities are like, there's places that are super walkable, even though they're like huge metropolises.
Hmm.
Like some of what I love to do on tour is just walk. Like I get up early, so I'll be like, I'm gonna walk an hour to this coffee shop and just see what I see in between. Get my steps in, like get some time.
Yeah.
And I think London is like that too, where I think I was just like walking through a park and then I was like, oh, that's Buckingham Palace. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
it's right there.
Yeah.
And Paris is kind of like that too. When you like walk along the river, you're like, oh, there's the Eiffel Tower. Like, oh, Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like
Yeah.
I don't seek out touristy stuff necessarily. But it's pretty cool being able to see those things.
Yeah, and that's the thing is it's not that it's not cool. I just it becomes like I remember when I was a kid a million years ago and we went to Disney and like they had the characters walking around and you would just go up to them and like, "Oh, Mickey, whatever." But now I hear there's like scheduled times and you wait in line and I'm like, I don't want to spend my vacation time waiting in line, you
Yeah.
know? It's like I want to be doing things. So,
Yeah.
like driving by me, like, "Ooh, look, there's Big Ben, Parliament, cool, let's go." Like that's
Did it, saw it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So check that box. We can go do
Yeah.
something weird and cool. Um, so you're coming to Are you coming to Massachusetts at all?
I that's kind of TBD. I think there was something that was going to happen in Holyoke, like Western Mass somewhere.
Yep.
But I don't know. I'm kind of in the process of rerouting a little bit.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Well, if you reroute to the coast, keep Plymouth in mind.
I know. I'm
Yeah.
just like trying to be in the like way of being easy and open about what's happening. It's like if something is feeling labored, like maybe I'll just have a day off, or maybe I'll go to some place where I have more friends. So at least if like five people come to the show, we're all having a good time together, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure.
I think
Yeah.
I'm
That's
being most of the shows are great, but Massachusetts specifically, there's like a question mark next to it. And it feels like it's getting
yeah.
close now. So I'm like,
I don't know what it is with people, and it could just be, we divide Massachusetts up into a bunch of different regions, and technically I live on the South Shore, and I don't know what it is with South Shore people. You could have a band that is amazing, puts on a great show, does original music. Maybe you get 50 people if you're lucky, but then you do
like
like a
50 people. That sounds
I mean,
good.
if you're lucky, like I mean that's like a big show. But
Yeah.
like then you do like a Tom Petty cover band and the place sells out like 400 tickets or something. You're like, I
Yes.
get it, but like what about the dude who's like really making his own stuff? And
Yeah.
yeah, so it's but I don't know, that could be everywhere. That's just my experience here.
I think it's nice too. I mean, I don't know, you mentioned art galleries before. Like if you have a gallery that also does music, I feel like part of being on tour and meeting people, it's like finding the people who are excited to do something on a small scale and kind of like know the audience that they can bring and be like, I will curate and put on a really great show that
Hmm.
25 people who are like really excited about it are going to come and be stoked in this like small gallery space.
Yeah,
That to me, if it feels warm and people are excited to be there, it kind of doesn't matter how many people are there. It's like
for
about
sure. Yeah,
people who are organizing it and curating it and fostering that
yeah,
environment. And
yeah. You're true. That's true. You know, 10,
so I
10 people who
wonder,
are super into it are way better than 500 people who could care less.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that's cool. Um, where can people go to purchase the album? Find out where you are going to be if you're actually going to show up at Holyoke.
I think the easiest place, like you could go to Bandcamp,
Yep.
find me on Bandcamp, or I just have a website that's my name.com. So I think there's like tour info there and yeah, links
And
to the music, I think.
do you do the social media crap too?
I am on Instagram for now. I don't know. It's such a weird world out there. Like, and in this time of like trying to like do social media detox and not spiral, not like doom scroll spiral, but also stay connected, stay engaged with what's going on. Not like, and you know, and it's like finding media sources that like are being maybe a little more honest about what's happening or like more
Yep.
reliable that doesn't always come from like mainstream media, right? So it's like tapping into different sources and not getting stuck in the scroll spiral, and at the same time like, and also whatever, like enabling these like billionaires who are being so fucked up right now. You know, we're all like on these platforms that just
I,
enable them
I,
essentially, but there's like nowhere to go, which
right.
they've
Yes.
probably made it so that there's nowhere to go also.
It's
And
almost
so
like
it's
they have
like,
a monopoly.
yeah. It's like I want to promote this. I want to get it out there. I want people to see it. Every time I open up these apps, I'm like, I fucking hate it here. Is
Yeah.
anyone even seeing this? Like,
Yep.
here's me and my little record when like the world is crumbling all around, you know, like
Yeah.
more devastating horrors happening every day and being like, come to my little show. It just feels,
But I think that's, I mean, you're saying it like that, but at the same aspect, I mean, I think that is incredibly valid. Now more than ever, we need kind of those breaks from, I mean, part of, This is my own personal opinion. Inebri-art does not sponsor this opinion. Um, I think we got to where we are because of the 24-hour news cycle and this like you must be afraid at all times. It, no, man, like you need to relax and take a break. And yes, some things are very horrible and need to be addressed, but if is your toothpaste killing you? I don't know. You don't need to worry about that 24/7. Like swap it out a little bit, I don't know. And it's like, so I think it's super important that people do decompress and get out.
Yeah.
And art has always been a way for people to speak out.
Yeah. We'll
And
talk about building community, like finding those spaces that feel safe to be in, that are supportive, that you can like commune and be there with your people
yeah,
in a time where like a
where they're
lot of
not hidden behind a keyboard.
yeah,
It's,
yeah,
you know,
yeah. I mean, I think that real life experience is so important to maintain if you can. I mean, some people have like long COVID and still can't like be around. They can't go
yeah.
to.
I have friends who are just starting to kind of like get out and, for a little bit here and there, and they're suffering with the long COVID. And,
Yeah.
and I'm trying not to be that human nature, be like, well, how bad could it be? Like, I
Oh,
don't know. I don't know how bad,
oh,
you
no.
know?
I mean, I know
Yeah.
I saw someone I hadn't seen in years, and she had long COVID, and she was like her body had like she was basically like in a wheelchair. She had like a
Oh,
walker. She's
geez.
like 40, and
That's
like it was just like
brutal.
shutting
Yeah.
down. She had autoimmune stuff already, and then it was just like shutting down her nervous system. And I
Oh,
was like, I had no idea it was this bad,
right.
like, or that it could be like that. Like, it was
Yeah.
just really devastating to see. And that, like, for people to find support around that, especially like with our medical system, like, don't
Jeez.
get me started.
Wonder
Anyway,
why we're like, let's see, what do we cover? Bird flu.
yeah. No, and this is like,
On the
I
next
mean,
happy episode of the Nebrio podcast.
sorry, but I'm just, this is life. Like, this is also life. And
Yeah.
I like have never, I talk about the fantasy of being on the road and stuff, but I'm never like detached from what's happening, especially when those things are happening to the people that I'm close to. And
Yeah, of course.
it's
Yeah.
like we are all as like safe, or like whatever kind of privileged bubbles we have, like this shit pierces a lot of those bubbles.
And that's one of those things where I try to one of our events is sponsored by Plymouth Pride, and I'm good friends with them, and they're phenomenal people. And rightfully so, they're kind of giving me grief about another particular person who is an acquaintance. I was going to say friend is way too strong a word, but acquaintance who is definitely not on their side. And I understand their point fully, but in the same aspect, conversations like this between me and that acquaintance are super important because I'm the one that can bridge that gap.
Mm.
Just being like, no one should talk to that guy. Well, then
Yeah.
he's not going to change.
Yeah, right. Like, I
You know?
don't believe in cancel
Yeah.
culture, as it's been as
I've just had too many conversations with people who I consider friends who are definitely on the other side of the aisle and who've even said to me, like, we get along so well. How are our political views so different?
yeah.
And like we've sat down and had conversation like that to me is the important part of not it's so hard because some of them are just downright villains.
Well, yeah, you're like,
But
what's
not
the
all of them.
line? Like, you're
Yeah.
transphobic, you're homophobic,
Yeah.
you're racist, like, but we get along, we can play golf,
Yeah,
like,
and it's one of those they are, but are they that way because they've never been exposed to it? Are they indoctrinated by religion? Like
or,
where does that come from? Like what is their big issue with it?
well, yeah, no, I
You
totally
know?
believe in like, especially when you're in relation with someone, if you like have love for them in any kind of capacity like that, those conversations need to happen and to continue to be fostered. And
Yeah.
I also think at the same time, I think it's okay to be like, these people are trying to deny the existence of trans people, and like we just can't give any kind of space to that, and like this
Yeah.
is done, you know.
Yeah. I 100%. And it's like you, it's such a gray, blurry area where like you have to be like, what you're saying is complete bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah, like if you can stand up to
Right.
them and be like, this is bullshit, and like let's continue to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I like
In a
people.
mature fashion. Like once you start yelling at me, we're all done. Like I, what,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, I think that that's really important to have like people who have the energy and the capacity to continue like discoursing.
yeah,
It's like that's really important because we'll just become more fractured and more isolated if it's like just drawing those hard lines. But I personally don't always have the capacity. Like in any, like I have the capacity to be that bridge in some cases.
yep. Oh
In
yeah, yeah.
others, I'm just like,
And Nona, sometimes you have to be selfish and be like, I'm just gonna sit here and drink my beer.
I mean, let's just sit here and sip my tea and
Yeah,
you can go.
yeah.
You can,
So
someone else can take care of you. Like I
yeah,
can't be this person for you.
yeah. It's difficult,
Yeah.
but thank you for coming on. This was a lot of fun,
Yeah, thanks
even
for
though we
chatting.
talked about some horrible things.
Sorry, that's just me. I'm
uh,
like, that's just who I am. I'm
no, don't
sorry.
be sorry. Like that's what I love about this podcast is like I never know where it's gonna go.
Yeah.
And I've said before, and I'll say it again, that my favorite podcasts are when a stranger comes in and a friend leaves. And so if you are in the Plymouth area, make sure you hit us up, and
Definitely, I will for sure.
we'll take you to a chill cocktail
Take me to that
bar.
dive.
Dude, that's my favorite. That is like my go-to. It is, and it is very, it is a place where your politics stay at the door. Like everyone in there is just all over the map and just good beer, good music, friends. Like the rugby game will be on a Saturday afternoon. I've gone in there on like a Sunday night at 7 o'clock, and the place is wall to wall, and people are hammered and singing, and you're like, "What day of the week is it? Don't you people have to work tomorrow? Like, what is
Yeah.
going on?" And it is just the silliest, fun, weird place. It is it to me. It is a bar that feels like sitting on your couch in your old ratty sweats. It's
Well,
just
yes.
comfortable.
Hardly had to leave home to get the experience that you needed.
Yeah, it's just comfortable, and it really doesn't matter. It's dark, and you're not there to impress anybody. And
Nope.
it's if you ask for like a fancy drink, they're gonna tell you no. So love it. So, but yeah, for sure. Again, listeners, Nona Invie's album is already out because I believe this goes up after February 28th. Self Soothing. Go to Bandcamp. Go see him on tour. It's a good time.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. And listeners, we'll catch you guys again next week.
And thanks for checking out the show today, listeners. If you enjoyed the content today, you can go over to patreon.com/Inebri-art to support the show. You can join over there for just a few dollars a month and help us provide this fun content that you just checked out. You can also email us at Inebri-art.com with your questions, complaints, and concerns, or you can find us on all social medias at Inebri-art or at Inebri-art6 on Instagram. And also don't forget to check out our other shows, Bar Talk Podcast, Old Colony Cast, Inebri-art, and all the other shows on the Inebri-art Network, which you can find at Inebri-art.com. Thanks again for listening.